I'm a bit mopey.
Why?
Oh, this unexpected, but and Charlotte always says, we're going to record everything, no matter what's going on. So, I've said that I'd do the recording now, but I'm actually feeling quite mopey and a bit tearful. But
Well,
it does lead on to an interesting thing that we can talk about today, I think. So,
it's up to you, Caroline. There's no
no,
pressure.
it's fine. No, I know it's fine. It's I know that Charlotte always likes us to kind of, we've always agreed when we said we were going to do these little chats that we were going to talk about, everything and no matter what was going on. And so it's fine, and this is all part of our lives, isn't it? This is what happens, not just to people with vaccine injuries, but anybody with any kind of chronic illness. And we always hoped that we might somehow connect with people who are dealing with that kind of thing too. No, I had just before we were due to call, I had a call from Japan, and which is where I think, I don't know if you know or not, but I spent 15 years living there, so I always kind of think of Japan as my home, even though I've been in England, I think it's 11 years now or 12 years. But I always think of Japan as my home, and there's a community of people there that I care about very much. Their lives were destroyed in the tsunami in 2011, and over the years I've become very close to that community, and I've helped them with various things to recover, and I've raised £175,000 for them. I've managed over 30 different projects for them, and my one of my books, my memoir, was about them. And it's very difficult to explain quite how much they mean to me, which is why the memoir ended up being massive, because they needed all of that to explain what they were like. So whenever they call me, it's always a little bit emotional because I miss them, and because I feel very, very close to them, and they, they always want updates about how I'm doing and everything. So I tell them, I don't have a lot of good news, actually. Nothing's really changed since August last year. So telling them that, and every time I speak to them, they say, oh, we can't wait to see you. We really hope we're going to see you soon. And every time they say that to me, I think, oh, I don't even know if I'm ever going to see them again. And I don't know. And even if I make it, am I going to be strong enough to even be able to get on that kind of journey? And it's not, it's just thought of the things that we're missing out on now, and what we might miss out on. And I try not to think, about what if or anything. I work really, really hard on not doing that. But the call was just, it's emotional, and the timing, it was just before we were about to talk. I'm making you upset, sorry.
No, it's fine. This will make a great little video for everyone. No, I've also had a bit of a tough week, so let's let it all out.
Yeah. And Charlotte, I've missed talking to Charlotte all week, actually. Her COVID she's really, really poorly, really poorly. And I managed to just have a couple of minutes with her yesterday. And she's so, so poorly. And
yeah, I've been quite worried about her, and I told her to, get medical help, but she did message today, and by the sounds of things, I think she's picking up a little bit.
it's really, really early days. Matthew had it, and his first week was horrific. And he's a really super fit, healthy person, and his first week of it was absolutely awful. And she, for her, it's only the first week. She's incredibly fragile anyway, as we all are, because we're all, our bodies are fighting all sorts of things related to the vaccine anyway. And then you get COVID on top of that, or, whatever, any kind of illness on top of that. It's really hard to deal with. So, yeah, it's just a bit rough. But the thing that I thought actually might be an interesting thing for us to talk about. I had a few ideas before we were going to talk, but given that I just had that phone call, I thought one of the interesting things that people don't, or they make wrong assumptions about, I think, is the reasons why people chose to get vaccinated. And it seems to be very easy for people who are, let's call them activists, that are against the vaccine. It seems to be quite easy for them to be quite dismissive of those of us who got vaccinated, and they say it was for, we were stupid, and we talk about this a lot, don't we? Say that how stupid we were. Clearly, I'm well, maybe not clearly, but I'm not a stupid person. I've got first class honours degree in maths. Not that necessarily means much, but I'm not a stupid person. You're obviously not a stupid person. You're a scientist, and so it almost kind of, it used to annoy me when they called us stupid. Now I just find it quite amusing, because clearly we're not. But the actual reasons why people chose to get vaccinated, we don't go into, and people talk about, they make comments about, the reason I got vaccinated was nothing to do with COVID. It was because of this community of people in Japan, and most people, perhaps they don't know that, but it was nothing to do with COVID at all. It was because I thought that was what I would need in order to get back to see this community of people who were really important to me. So I was willing to do it. And
would you have done it if you didn't have a life in Japan? Would you have done it?
I don't think I would have done. I can't say that.
Yeah, but I mean,
yeah. I probably, that's a really, really good question. I probably would have waited a bit, because I don't socialize. I'm not out and about. I'm work from home. I might have waited a bit, actually, thinking of, I wouldn't have been in such a rush. I was in a rush. I couldn't wait to go there and get it, because all I was thinking about was, I need to get back to the people in Japan that I want to see. I was completely fixated on that. I didn't even think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I was obviously dead keen to get it. I'd been doing a lot of science communication and myth busting, and I think particularly early on in the pandemic, there was just outright bullshit. People would just say things and it would become a truth, and there was literally no substance to it. So I was trying to explain some more of the science, and I had some really good chats with people who are vaccine hesitant, and they went and got vaccinated in the end. And then I had a reaction, obviously, which was very strange, to go through. But at the first sort of 6 or 8 months, I didn't really talk about it, because like a lot of us, I thought it was just me, and I'm like, oh, I'm just a weirdo, like something's wrong with me. And yeah, it was a reaction to the vaccine, but my immune system's gone funky, so I didn't really talk about it, and I didn't really tell anyone beyond my close friends. And a few of my friends didn't get vaccinated for a little while, and one of them had quite a scary encounter with COVID, and I've got a bit of guilt about, whether part of that was because of what I told them about my own health. So it was all a bit of a mindfuck. Yeah, I was obviously working in a hospital, working on a COVID study, desperate to get vaccinated. And actually we were my department were quite slow to get vaccinated, believe it or not, compared to others in the hospital. So we got it quite late. And then, yeah, I mean, it was a complete shock. And I think what was more of a shock wasn't necessarily my reaction, but then sort of whenever it was 8 months down the line, when I realized it was lots of people, that was the biggest shock. I was like, whoa, hang on.
So you didn't realize other people until about 6 or 8 months down the line? You didn't realize there were so many other people?
Yeah, so the first person I was in contact with, she's called Fallerin on Twitter, and her partner does a lot of nutrition science communication and bullshit busting. So I knew him, and he put out a tweet about, has anyone else had a weird chronic reaction? My partner's not doing so well. And so she was my first contact. Yeah, after it was about half a year or so after my reaction.
So
So
how on earth do you get through 6 months thinking you're the only person that's happening to? I'll tell you, the first person I found was I don't, celebrity names, those, Katie Price, is that
she's a celebrity, yeah.
celebrity, right? So Katie Price has a son.
I live under a rock, Caroline.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't know.
oh God, I don't know anything. I lived out the country when all these people became famous, and I don't watch TV. So, right, but I am aware there's a woman called Katie Price. Did she? I think did she used to be called Jordan?
Maybe
I think I
that
might know
rings
that.
bells.
And she's ringing a bell, right? And she has a son, and her son has a health condition that makes him vulnerable. So he was vaccinated early. So he was I think he's about 18 or 19, and he was vaccinated at the same time as I was. And I was looking trying to find information about what's going on, and all I could find was this Katie Price, and it was all over some paper saying she was talking about her son having this reaction. I thought, oh, I found one person, and then it just disappeared from the media. And I thought I was the only person, but it was for a matter of weeks. I thought I was the only person. You thought for 6 months, and you work in a science environment. What was that doing to your head?
Well, I think I'm quite chill about things. Like, actually, the whole experience hasn't. I've had some very low points, but overall, it hasn't got to me mentally in the same way I see it get to other people mentally. I have moments of real sadness, and then I'm generally, oh well, this is just life. So yeah, I think it was difficult because I was still doing science communication and very much encouraging my friends to get vaccinated. And to be fair, at that time, the benefits were overwhelming. Like there was really no doubt in my mind that there was a lot of benefits. Now I'm a bit more like, well, benefits aren't quite what they were at the beginning of all of this. So yeah, it was a bit awkward, but I was also frantically, as we all do, trying to understand these vaccine reactions. And I did find out, when I joined the groups, I had got to the points of autoimmunity, inflammation, chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy. They're the kind of angles I went. And then I joined the groups, and I was like, whoa, these guys know loads of stuff. And it seems I was on the right lines with some stuff that we'd kind of I discovered independently. And then there was also other things like mast cell activation, and then Falarin introduced me to the microclots idea. So yeah, it just kind of spiraled, but it was phenomenal to see how far ahead of the game and how far ahead of the science that the community already were in. And then
They're amazing, aren't they? They're so clever, don't you? They just astound me how clever they are.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal. And then I'd been taken to the doctor. So one of my friends is an immunologist, so I'd been talking to him, and he was a bit stumped, and we'd been talking through ideas about what this could be. And I'd take those ideas to my doctor, and then when I found the support groups, and I was like, well, there's all these other ideas, and then I just got blank looks all the time. I was saying, well, me and my immunologist friend have been talking about this. The doctor was like, yeah, I can see that. And then when I was like, oh, there's other stuff, it was like.
So does your doctor kind of respect the input you bring from the things you've learned on the groups?
So my first doctor was open-minded enough to consider things, but if it didn't intuitively ring with him, he was a bit dismissive. And my current doctor, yeah, he'll listen intentively. Is that the right word? He'll listen in depth. I don't know what the word is to what I've got to say, and he'll take it all on board. But I think he was my doctor from about 9 months in, so had 9 months without that, which in the scheme of things is pretty good, to be fair.
I remember when I had one conversation with my GP. I said I was talking about something to do with nutrition, and she knew I was working with a functional medicine practitioner at that point, and her response actually was, I defer to your functional medicine practitioner with that. She will know more than I do about it. And I had so much respect for her for saying that. And I wish, I like to share those stories because I find my GP really supportive, and I want other GPs to know it's okay to be like that with their patients. And I want other people like us, not just like us, but people dealing with these weird, complicated health problems, to know that there are GPs out there who are happy to say, I don't know, this specialist might help with this specialist might help with that. And they don't have to be within the pharmaceutical focused health industry, I suppose.
Yeah, I think like that's one thing that my current doctor does well, is that when he doesn't know, he'll go and find answers from people who do know. Whereas I think my experience of other doctors is they'll either pretend to know, or they'll call it anxiety or something, or they'll just kind of go, don't know, and that's that. That's the end of it. So I think definitely, I mean, even now, like when you're talking about functional medicine doctors and people talk about acupuncture and stuff like that, obviously, I mean, if that was me 2 years ago, I would just be like, nah.
Have you tried acupuncture?
Yes.
Since this happened?
No, I actually had it on the NHS many years ago for a neck injury. I had a car accident in 2008 and had a severe neck injury from that. And I had it, and it was actually very effective for pain relief. So effective that I increased my activity, and then my course of acupuncture stopped, and the pain came rushing back with a vengeance. Now I can explain that all scientifically. You can say all placebo effects and expectation effects and blah blah blah. But now I think I'm much more like, do you know what? Regardless of the reasons, it might be a placebo effect, it might be something we haven't quite worked out, it might be a whole range of things. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter on an individual level, because if it helps you, it helps you. And if it's not doing harm and it's helping you, then that's really all that matters. So yeah.
So I've had two experiences with acupuncture that I'd be interested to see what your take is then on this and different ways of looking at this. So I went to acupuncture for a lot last year. I don't go so much now, although I can go up there any time, and I found it very helpful. And I often think with these things, the benefits of having somebody spend an hour with you talking about your symptoms, helping you organize your thoughts, and giving the energy of healing, wanting to heal and being committed to working with you on your health. I often think that has a massive benefit in addition to just the actual treatment. So, but I didn't go into acupuncture just assuming it was going to work. It was more kind of desperation, right? I'll try anything. So I'm not one of those people who go in thinking this is going to work, this is going to work. So I don't have that, the way some people think, right, that works because they believe it does. I don't have that. But I did, so that's this whole experience. But the very first time I tried acupuncture was probably about 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago in Japan. And I was desperate. I had a heart operation, and I did not recover very well from that heart operation. And after having that heart operation, I started having excruciating migraines on a multiple migraines a day. So I went to try acupuncture to see if that would work. And I can still remember the feeling of that very first needle going into my toe. And it was like an electric shock went around every single part of my body, and it zoomed all the way around my body. And I've never experienced anything like that all since. But I can still remember it very clearly. And I was migraine free for a month.
Yeah,
Somebody who didn't believe, I didn't believe it. Now
yeah,
I was desperate. So what's that about?
yeah. I mean, again, you can go back to like, is it placebo effect? And it could well be. 'Cause, I'd say maybe there's something to acupuncture, but I don't think it's the ideas that the Chinese medicine puts forward in terms of uh, qi and stuff like that. But that kind of concept, maybe there's like a physiological equivalent, maybe like the way the needles interact with the nerves or something does do something. I don't know.
It's
Um,
amazing, isn't it? Interesting though. And my
yeah,
other thing, I've got to tell you about this because this is my recent one, and I think I mentioned this to you. We were chatting a couple of weeks ago. So I'm taking my blood out,
yeah,
and my favourite little spot. I've got a really nice. You probably can't see it on it, but I've
yeah,
got a little
yeah,
vein here, which if I warm up. If I put a hot water bottle on for half an hour, it can come up really nicely. And then you put the tourniquet on and then wait for it to, and it pops up. And it's quite nice to do it there. So there it is. So I put it in there, and I put the needle right in, and a squirt of blood came out the tube, but then it stopped. And I've learned a different technique, but it wasn't coming any further. So I was poking around with this needle. I was doing all of this, poking it around like that. Forgot to take the tourniquet off, so something was going on with pressure, I think. And it ended up, the vein just popped right up, and I got this big bubble, came up like that. And I thought, oh no, so I'm doing all of this, take the needle out, stop the bleeding. But something in that had the same effect as if I'd taken some blood out, because I went for, I think it was over a week of feeling fairly clear-headed, and all I'd done was had a good old stab around with this needle. And I emailed a few friends who are acupuncturists, and I said, what would be your take on this? And my actual acupuncturist here, she said, I think you accidentally acupunctured yourself. So now I'm thinking, right, I'm going to try, because my ferritin's low, so I really don't want to be taking too much blood out if I can help it. So now I just try stabbing there. But what, there's no explanation. It's really interesting. There doesn't seem to be.
there's no known explanation.
Hmm.
But I think an error that a lot of us make is that it seems so counterintuitive, and it seems to just be a Caroline quirk or a group of people quirk, that we end up saying, so it's probably placebo, or it's probably X or Y. And actually I think the better question is or is it something? Well, the thing with like uh I think homeopathy is, there's some really good studies on homeopathy, and what they show is that the stronger the study design, the less of an effect homeopathy has. So if you have a completely open, just I believe in homeopathy and I go to a homeopathist, and then you're more likely to get better. But if you like placebo control, double blind it kind of thing and make it a really tight study, then it has no effect. But that in itself is very interesting to know, because like you said, the attention you get from your doctor is actually really important. And one of the most, we all talk about it, like I've been to the doctor again and got dismissed. And literally, if a doctor just listens to you, you can accept they don't have a cure for everything. So yeah, part of it might be that attention, but then you come up with your case like that, and you're like, well, you're not giving yourself particularly new attention. So what's going on, and could there be a physiological cause? Is there now an expectation effect that when you stab yourself, you get better? We can induce a placebo effect in animals like this. If you give an injured horse a painkiller through an injection, and then give them a placebo, they can get a pain relieving effect. So we can
Well,
induce this in animals.
hold on. You can do that to animals.
Yeah. Well, I can't. I've never done it.
No,
But
but
yeah,
they will have
there's
a response, even
there
though
is
they've
studies
not been
on that.
given. Wow.
Yeah. So it's like a behavioural learned response. I'm not an expert in this, and I think there's some controversies about it, but I've definitely read studies that have shown a placebo effect in animals. So there might now just be an expectation effect. And again, I'm coming at this as a classic scientist, if you like. That's how we might explain this, is that maybe there is something therapeutic to the phlebotomy that you do, but now you're associating that with being stabbed, and that might be where the magic is. But equally, maybe there's something really fascinating going on. Maybe there's maybe touching the nerves in a particular way, or inducing a small inflammatory response from the needle. I don't know.
And it comes back to that thing we always say, is that until people are studying us, we don't have any definitive answers.
Yeah, I mean, if I had a lab, I would be wanting to get you in immediately, because it's fascinating. Like, the fact that how did you even discover taking your own blood?
I had a lot of blood tests done in one session, and it was August the 4th. So March, April, May, June, July. So I'd been 5 months hardly functioning whatsoever, and I walked when I had all the blood taken. The phlebotomist said, "Are you going to be okay walking from here?" Most people would really struggle. They'd faint. We'd expect them to be fainting after having that amount of blood taken. Are you going to be okay? And I said, actually, I feel fine. I feel better. And I said, I'll come back in if I collapse in the street. And although I wouldn't have been able to do that, but you know what I mean. And I walked out of the hospital, out of the GP surgery, and I thought, my goodness, my brain, I feel better. I haven't felt like this for 5 months. It was like hanging. I mean, you've talked about this. It's like having a hangover for months. Walked out. I thought, right, I think I might walk home. I only lived 10 minutes away, but I hadn't been able to walk that far that whole time. And I walked all the way home, and I thought, I still feel okay. I can walk. I can think. Everything was working. And I made a joke at the time about how must have been something in the medieval bloodletting, but just really didn't think it was true, didn't believe it until a couple of months later. I was so desperate because I was back to square one again, and the only thing I could think of, I had to try, was I'm going to try and get some blood out of me. And I was desperate, and I've told this story before. There was 300 quid cash lying around the house. I put 300 quid in my bag, and I went into town to try and find a drug dealer to teach me how to stick a needle in my arm. I did, because I was that desperate. I thought, well, they'll know how to put needles in my arms. I'd asked them at the hospital if they would do it in the phlebotomy centre there, and they wouldn't do it. I asked, my GP was on holiday, so I spoke to the GP that was there and said, please, could you help me? The phlebotomist at the hospital will take it out, but they need somebody to sign off on it. And the doctor hung up on me. So I was desperate. So I went into town and tried to find a drug dealer. And on the way, I got an email from a phlebotomy service that I had contacted before, thinking, well, they're not going to listen to me. And they agreed to come to the house and to take some blood out. And it was, Matthew sat here and watched it, and he just could not believe the difference. It was, and it's been filmed for a documentary, not that session, but another session. And even the filmmakers said they just couldn't believe the change. So, I mean, you'll see it on camera at some point. So, but it was by accident I discovered it, and then I tried it on purpose, and it worked, and it's the only way I have any quality of life.
Yeah, it's just fascinating, and I think it's so my undergraduate degree was in martial arts and sports psychology, so I had a bit of a funky beginning, and we did a module in traditional Chinese medicine, and one of the kind of key messages I took from Chinese medicine is that the job of the doctor is to make sure you're healthy, and any time that you're unhealthy, they have failed their job. And I thought that's a really good way to think about health, because the doctors here are very much of, you're unhealthy and I make you better. And there is some preventative medicine going on, but by and large, it's about, you go to your doctor when you're sick to make sure you're not sick anymore, or to get better. And I thought that's such a great way to look at it. And when you talk about things like that, and I hear stories of people buying needles and vitamin B12 online because that's what makes them feel better, and then they're at home jabbing themselves. And I think, what kind of healthcare do we have? Well, we can't provide basic healthcare because we haven't got guidelines that say, well, if someone feels better with B12, just jab them, for goodness sake. It's a harmless intervention. And you're going to do more harm, let them do it themselves.
Exactly. I'm not doing this safely. I mean, from a nutrition point of view, I want somebody to be able to monitor me safely. And this is something that all of us, because we're going to run out of time in a minute. So, but this is something that all of us who are trying treatments, we need to have intelligent conversations with healthcare practitioners, even if they don't know about these particular things that we're trying. At least we can have a conversation with them,
and at least we can be monitored, and they can say, well, do you know what, I don't think you need these B12 jabs, or I don't think you need X, but we'll get a nurse to do it to make sure you're safe, or we'll get a nurse to train you to make sure you're safe, and here's a number you can call if anything goes wrong. And just actually be there actively supporting and saying, I don't personally agree with this, but I'm going to support you in doing it, and I want you to be aware of X, Y, and Z risks. And that's
and
really,
we'd all be happy to sign waivers and know that we're in an unusual situation, and we want to try something and make sure, have our bloods monitored, say, just to say, is everything staying healthy while we're doing that, even though we don't know what other things might be going on. But that would be great if we could have people do that. We're going to run out. Thank you. You've perked me up a little bit, actually, Harriet. Thank you so much.
I'm glad. I'm sorry you've had a bit of an emotional morning.
No, it's like it for all of us. All of these things kind of happen, but we didn't talk in more detail actually about the reasons people chose to get vaccinated. There's a whole load of other. We always do this, though. Charlotte and I always do this. We end up going off in all sorts of directions. So thanks for coming in last minute today.
No problem. Thanks for having me again so soon.
Yeah, no, and hopefully we'll have you back on. But hopefully Charlotte will be coming back soon, and we're all missing her and hoping she gets better soon.